All right, we're continuing in the book of Hajj in the Lucid Word. The author says requisites of Hajj. So this is the word in English that they chose to use for wajib of Hajj. So you know that wajib and fard mean the same thing, except in the chapter of Hajj, which is obligatory. But in the chapter of Hajj, wajib is something you're obligated to do, but if you don't do it, this will not invalidate the Hajj or leave the Hajj incomplete. It will be sinful to not do it. It's possible to not do an obligation of Hajj and still complete your Hajj. So the requisites of Hajj are obligations in Hajj or mandatory matters in the Hajj, but that are not integrals. After the author finished discussing the prohibitions of Ihram, he started talking about the requisites of pilgrimage, the obligations of pilgrimage. In the context of pilgrimage, requisite, wajib, refers to whatever is compensated for with slaughter. So, this, I find it interesting here. They put all the Arabic words all over the place in this text. It didn't even offer the Arabic transliteration here. Wajib, the wajibs of Hajj. Wajib refers to whatever is compensated for with slaughter, but leaving it out does not invalidate the Hajj. And like we said, maybe we want to say here, does not leave the Hajj incomplete. Because there's only one invalidator of Hajj, which is apostasy. Not even leaving out an integral actually invalidates the Hajj. It just leaves it incomplete. I want to look in Bughya and see what Shaykh says here. Kitab al-Hajj. I just find it interesting, the use of the word invalidate here, when there's only one invalidator of Hajj. Now, the Shaykh, rahimahullah, he's very meticulous and exact. So if you use the word invalidate here, so let me see. So it says, I'm just going to translate directly. The explanation is that this is initiating, embarking on the topic of the wajibs, which in the chapter of Hajj is what's compensated for by slaughter or sacrifice. And it doesn't ruin the nusuk. You know what nusuk means. That's the worship of Hajj or Umrah, by leaving it out. So it doesn't ruin the nusuk. So that's probably why they said invalidate. I could have looked right into Al-Qawl Al-Jaliyy, Arabic text, but I want to see what the Shaykh says here, not what somebody else says. So Shaykh here, he says, la yafsud, doesn't ruin the Hajj. So it's important here that we need to use two different words for in English for butlan and fasad, which is what I usually do, but they didn't do it in this translation of Lucid Word. And inshallah, I'm looking into the clear statement. That's another translation of Al-Qawl Al-Jaliyy. We'll see what's there. Not at the moment. The Shaykh said that leaving out a wajib does not ruin the nusuk or corrupt it. He didn't say la yubtil, doesn't invalidate it. If we want to translate those two words differently. All right, let's get back to where we were. So, after the author finished discussing the prohibitions of ihram, he started talking about the obligations or requisites or mandatory matters of pilgrimage. In the context of pilgrimage, wajib refers to whatever is compensated for with slaughter. But leaving it out does not, according to the Shaykh's words, does not ruin the Hajj. Let me see what's in the Arabic text also of Al-Qawl Al-Jaliyy. Probably they said it like the Shaykh said it. Here it is. They said in the Arabic, وَلَا يَفْسُدُ الْحَجُّ بِتَرْكِهِ, like the Shaykh said. Doesn't ruin the Hajj. So Differentiating between those two words in English is important. Fasad in Hajj is ruining or spoiling or corrupting the Hajj, which means you have to complete it and then make it up. As opposed to invalidating the Hajj, which means you stop dead in your tracks, you don't complete it and then make it up. You just stop dead in your tracks, and you wouldn't have invalidated it unless you committed apostasy, which would mean you have to re-embrace Islam immediately, and then you're gonna have to make it up after that, but not complete it. All right, so he, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, it is an obligation on the person aspiring to perform Hajj or Umrah to make the intention of Ihram before crossing the miqat. So I don't know a very good word for miqat. Miqat is what he says right here. The miqat is the place designated by the Messenger of Allah as the place where one establishes the intention of Ihram. So this means that there's spots, depending on which direction you come from, to get to Hajj. Because you might be coming from Yemen, you might be coming from Medina, you might be coming from Iraq, you might be coming from Egypt. Depending on which direction you're coming from, there are places that you can't cross those places with the intention to go to Hajj or Umrah without being in a state of Ihram. So if you did cross those places without being in Ihram, although you want to go for Hajj or Umrah, that would be haram. And if you make Ihram after that, it's still going to be a valid Ihram. You still can do a valid Hajj, but you committed a sin. Boundary? I don't know. Not sure. I'll have to look into the word in Arabic, inshallah ta'ala. Yani, it means kind of like that, though. There are 5 sites, 5 miqats for establishing this intention. So look here. There are 5 sites they put in Arabic, mawaqit. Mawaqit is the plural of miqat, but then in the English they put miqat. So that defeat the purpose of the Arabic word here. They put these Arabic words here so that you can know how to say the English words. So you can know how to read the English, read the Arabic words that are spelled in English letters. So they did that sometimes there. So that's an inconsistency there. There are 5 sites, miqats, for establishing this intention, like Dhul Hulayfa, nowadays known as Abar Ali. It is considered the miqat for the people of Al-Madinah and those traveling by that route. Anyone who goes to Mecca through the way the people of Medina would, then they can't cross the miqat, which is Dhul Hulayfa, without being in a state of ihram. It is considered the miqat for the people of Al-Madinah and those traveling by that route who are not from Al-Madinah. It is a requisite in Hajj, not Umrah, for the pilgrim to stay at night, or if you want, to spend the night in the area of Muzdalifah, the precinct, if you want, or the district called Muzdalifah, i.e. to be present there after midnight of Eid, even if it is for one moment. So what do we have after the midnight of Eid? We have, that's when Tawaf starts, obligatory Tawaf. That's when shaving or trimming starts. That's when throwing at Jamratul Aqaba starts, which is a wajib though. The Tawaf is a rukin, an integral. The shaving or trimming is an integral. Throwing at Jamratul Aqaba is a wajib, and being at Muzdalifah also starts at that time. That's a wajib. Question: are the miqats clearly marked nowadays for travelers to know the sites of ihram? I don't know how clear they are, but they are definitely known. Even in the airplanes, they'll tell you make make ihram before we cross the miqat. That's what I've been told. I wasn't there myself. Didn't yet get the opportunity to go. It is also a wajib to stay the night at Mina, i.e. to be present there during most of the 3 nights of Tashriq. If one did not leave Mina before the sunset of the 2nd day of Tashriq. So now let's recall our timeline here. Our timeline is that we have the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, that's the day before the Eid. We have the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, that's the Eid. Then we have 3 days of Tashriq, so that's the 11th, 12th, and 13th. So on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, what do we have? We have on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah being at Arafah. That starts after Zenith. So when Dhuhr time comes in. And it extends until Fajr. That means it goes into the Eid day. Up until dawn, that is. Into the Eid night, rather. Until dawn. So then we have the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. Then Maghrib comes in, which is going to start the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. That's Eid. Still time for Arafah, because Arafah goes all the way until Fajr. And at midnight on Eid, then you have all the activities we just mentioned. Tawaf starts then. Shaving or trimming starts then. Throwing at Jamratul Aqaba starts then. And being at Muzdalifah also starts then. Or is then at that time. And this is a good review for me. I'm just really, wallahi, I'm putting all this together now. Like, not right now, but out of all the review I've been doing with you all. That's why you should teach if you have the chance to, because it will make you understand the religion. All right, so you have on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, Arafah. That extends until the 10th, up until Fajr time. And then on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, at midnight, that is, though, we have starting then Tawaf, shaving or trimming, throwing stones at Jamratul Aqaba, and being at Muzdalifah. All right. Then it says here, this ruling is according to one saying of Imam Ash-Shafi'i being at Muzdalifah, meaning according to a saying it's Sunnah. According to a saying, being at Muzdalifah is Sunnah. It is also a requisite to stay at night in Mina, yani to spend the night if you want, in Mina, which is another district, which is to be present there during most of the 3 nights of Tashriq. What are the 3 nights of Tashriq? Those are the 3 nights after the Eid. It is also a requisite to stay at night in Mina, i.e. to be present there during most of the 3 nights of Tashriq. If one did not leave Mina before the sunset of the 2nd Tashriq day. So you have to be at Mina for 3 nights. Those are all 3 nights of Tashriq, unless you leave Mina before Maghrib on the 2nd day of Tashriq. Then the 3rd night is dropped for you because the religion is easy. Yani, out of the mercy of Allah, that is. Yani, as a demonstration of the ease of the religion. However, if one leaves before that, one is permitted to skip staying for the 3rd night. So I think that's clear. If you have a question, go ahead and ask. This ruling is also according to one saying of Imam Ash-Shafi'i. There's also a saying that neither staying in Muzdalifah nor Mina is an obligation. Now they changed the word. Here it says obligation, up there it says requisite. I say should be one or the other so that the one who's reading this doesn't get confused. Rather, they are recommended. Hence, omitting either of them does not render one sinful, nor requires one to slaughter a sheep or a goat. Meaning, if you want, you can take the saying that both Mina and Muzdalifah are sunnah, you don't have to do them. It is a requisite to throw 7 pebbles at Jamratul Aqaba on the day of An-Nahr. The day of An-Nahr is the Eid day. Its time starts after midnight. We said that now. and extends until the last day of Tashriq. Uh, okay. So then, throwing at Jamratul Aqaba starts on the midnight of Eid and extends until the last of the days of Tashriq. 3 days of Tashriq are over at Maghrib time, meaning the last hour of the third day of Tashriq is Asr time. Then when the sun goes down, the 3 days of Tashriq are over. So that Eid day and those 3 days of Tashriq, that is for the Muslims a 4-day holiday, 4-day holiday. And it is a requisite and obligation to throw 7 pebbles at each of the 3 stations in a specific order during the days of Tashriq. 3 stations, the 3 stations that haven't been mentioned up until now. So that's potentially confusing there. The 3 stations. What 3 stations? You say the might give the impression of something that's already known. But up until now, and what we've been reading, they haven't appeared, so that the word the has a strong relevance here. The 3 stations that haven't been mentioned yet, but they're about to be mentioned. Which 3 stations? You have to throw 7 pebbles at each of 3 stations that we're going to mention in a specific order during the days of Tashriq, after the sun's declination westward from its zenith. Uh, yani, during the 3 days of Tashriq, you have to throw pebbles at the 3 stations, 3 stoning stations. When does that time start on each day? It starts at Dhuhr time each day. When does Dhuhr start? When the sun declines westward from its zenith. The pilgrim starts with the station near the Mosque of Khaif, then proceeds to the one next to it, and then the one next to it. One may delay throwing pebbles of the first 2 days until the third day. Lastly, the pilgrim is required to perform the farewell circumambulation, the farewell tawaf, according to a saying of Ash-Shafi'i. And according to another saying, it is recommended to do so. It says here the pilgrim, but this obligation is not special to the pilgrim. Meaning, according to a saying, it's obligatory to make tawaf before you leave the haram, because of a hadith that has a command to do so. And a command is evidence for an obligation, unless there's other evidence to say that it's not an obligation. The one who does not fulfill these 6 matters does not, so it says here, invalidate, so does not ruin or corrupt his pilgrimage, because they are requisites, obligations, mandatory matters that are not integrals. However, they are sinful and required to expiate. They means the one. However, he is sinful, that one who does not fulfill these 6 matters. He is sinful and required to expiate. And this is slightly confusing here because it says they are right here about the obligations. Then it says right here, they are and about the one who doesn't fulfill those 6 things. This is different than not performing one of the aforementioned integrals. I'd say different from. This is different from not performing one of the aforementioned integrals, because pilgrimage is not achieved, is not completed without these integrals. Therefore, slaughtering a sheep or goat does not compensate for neglecting the integrals. Well, what are they translating as achieved here? I'm curious. Let me see. لا يحصل. لا يحصل بدونها. It doesn't happen. So it's not complete, is the meaning. He said, how is the throwing of the stones? Does the stone have to reach a certain area for it to be valid? I heard that sometimes the area is very packed. Yes. Yeah, he has to. It does have to be. It does have to reach a certain area. Yani the throwing has to be within a certain boundary to be valid. That's correct. A person has to have a certain target, which is the stoning area. He has to have a target, which is the stoning area. So if his stone is outside of the stoning area, that's not going to be valid. You have to throw those stones one by one. If you threw all 7 at once, it's counted as one. Or if you threw 2 or 3 or 4 at once, it's counted as one, for example. It has to be stones. So it can't be something else like pearls. Those are not stones. Or golden nuggets. Those are not stones. But it could be diamonds because those are stones. Hunting wild edible animals and pulling or cutting the plants of the 2 harams, yani the 2 sacred territories, the haram of Mecca and the haram of Medina, are forbidden. So you already know about hunting wild edible animals, land animals, wild edible land animals. That's haram. Uh, in the haram, even if you're not a pilgrim. By saying edible, we're excluding what's not edible, like a lion or a scorpion. By saying land animals, we are excluding fish. And by saying wild, we are excluding domesticated animals. So it's not haram to slaughter a chicken or a sheep or something like that, even if you're a pilgrim. But hunting the wild edible animals and pulling or cutting the plants of the 2 harams, the haram of Mecca and the haram of Medina, are forbidden. As for the haram of Mecca, that was established by Abraham alayhi salatu wassalam, and it was preserved since then. And as for Medina, that was established by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, I establish a haram for Medina like Abraham established a haram for Mecca. So it is not permissible to cut their trees or uproot them. Yani you can't chop the tree down and you can't pull it up out of the ground by its roots. But we're not talking about, for example, your farm plants. I'm not talking about if you're a farmer and you have wheat or something like that and you got to harvest and you live in the haram or your property is there. So it is not permissible to cut their trees or uproot them. This prohibition applies for both the one who is in the state of ihram and the one who is not, like we just said. If the above mentioned is done in Mecca, the obligation to expiate is added. There is no expiation due for hunting animals or cutting plants in the haram of Medina. It's just haram. For Mecca, there's an expiation for doing that. For Medina, there's not. It's just haram. I.e., the area between Mount Ayr and Mount Thawr. They put Ayr in Arabic here, but they didn't put Thawr in Arabic. Postscript, meaning basically epilogue. Some last words before finishing the chapter of Hajj. Visiting the Prophet's grave is recommended by unanimous consensus. So that makes Wahhabis deviants because their creed is against this. Whether the visitor is a resident of Al-Madinah or not, and whether one is a pilgrim or not, the early and later Muslims did this habitually. Their unanimity in recognizing the rewardableness of this deed has been established. In this context, several hadiths were narrated, one of which is the hadith narrated by Ad-Daraqutni, Man zara qabri wajabat lahu shafa'ati. Whoever visits my grave is guaranteed my intercession. Hafiz As-Subki, Al-Ala'i, and others graded it as a Hasan hadith, yani a fair hadith. It says well authenticated. I'd say it means fair hadith. Hasan hadith means that it fulfills the lowest conditions of acceptability. So it's a fair hadith. It's acceptable according to the lowest conditions of acceptability. Question. So if one is not in the state of ihram, it is still unlawful for them to hunt the animals in the haram and to pull out the trees in the haram. And if he does it in Mecca, he has to do an expiation. But in Medina, there's no expiation. It's just haram. And if you notice here, all of what we just read, still something is missing, which is what is the expiation for doing any of the haram things? It's not here. And we're not going to say it because I just want to stick to the book for now. So then, inshallah, when we read a text that has that information in it, then we'll read it there, like Abu Shuja, or another book, inshallah, or yani, maybe Bughya, for example. So then that's the end of the chapter of Hajj in the Lucid Word, Al-Qawl Al-Jaliyy. And then we're coming up to the chapter on dealings. We'll start that next week if Allah enables us. Any questions?